Good afternoon, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to this afternoon's program. May I start by wishing all the wonderful women out there special greetings on this Women's Day. Today, we remember, we honor, and we celebrate the lives of both the sung and the unsung heroines of our nation, past and present. So it's wonderful that we have this opportunity to come together, and we've got a very beautiful and powerful program for this afternoon, which I'm sure we are all going to thoroughly enjoy and take a lot of strength and also enjoyment from. So I would like to start by introducing to you our first item for this afternoon. It is a poem by a young poet by the name of Manape Precious Shogole. She is a spoken word poet and an anthropologist. She has performed both locally and internationally in both Germany and Sweden. Manape has spent time working as a Bagaresi for her anthropology MA thesis titled Abagaresi, Embodiment and Separation at Source, studied through the lens of everyday informal street reclaiming Johannesburg. Her focus is on the waste pickers who are affected by state programs and how these waste pickers, who are part of the grassroots people, respond to the needs of climate change. Manape is also a meditator at our center in Soweto, Diepkloof. This afternoon, Manape has sent a recording of her poem, but I just want to acknowledge that she has joined us from her hospital bed. And Manape, we send all our good wishes to you, a lot of love, and thank you so much for participating this afternoon. And we look forward to your poem. Thank you.
I saw my inspiration. She was facing in a different direction when I was called by her reflection. She thought I was crying when I was enlightened by her spirit. Eyes captured the reflection from the soul, so they glittered. I paid more attention on how she turned the page, how she doesn't look her age, on how she engaged with more words. I never saw my inspiration that day. I was one with her soul. I am my inspiration. She is my inspiration. My inspiration is woman. She is my inspiration. Wake up, woman, wake up, woman. Live with passion and play with zeal, for this is the time to learn and heal. God has given you all you need to go to the world and truly succeed. He knows, I know, and so do you. So tell me now, what will you do with life's greatest gift bestowed in you? The choice is yours to choose to crawl or fly. Wake up, woman, and tell me now, what shall you do? 'Cause life awakes your decision eternally. Wake up, woman, and tell me now, what shall you do? 'Cause life awakes for your decision eternally. Wake up, woman, wake up, woman. I thank you.
We thank you, Manape. Thank you so much. That is a powerful, powerful words and powerful message to us. and we wish you all the best. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator for this afternoon. And I just discovered just now that our moderator doesn't like long introductions, which is a good thing because I don't have many words to say about her. Her name is Bunie Matlanyane Sexwale. And Bunie is an old friend of the Brahmakumaris, and she is a self-employed development consultant and woman and gender specialist. She is a researcher, an essayist, freedom fighter, feminist leader, and movement builder. Bunie initiated Lesaka Labasadi, a solidarity circle of women, healing and transforming. Through this and her other work, she aspires to instill feminism as an act of love. And I know that these few words do not do her justice. She is a lot more than this. But Bunie, thank you for being with us this afternoon, and I hand over to you.
Thank you, Belinda, my sister. Good morning, everyone. My first invitation is for us to take time, just counting from 1 to 5 slowly, in a quiet reflection of the love that we are bringing into this day and the memory of the women that gave their lives to the struggle in all corners, in all ways of being. So I'll keep quiet. I'll invite everybody to just be quiet and go in as I count from 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Thank you. So today we have been invited by the Brahma Kumaris to commemorate the occasion that in South Africa we call the National Women's Day. It is a day on which we remember the great warrior women who put on the agenda of the struggle the wage against the extension of passes, which we call dom passes, which are the IDs that confined movement for the oppressed masses, both men and women, children, and everybody else. That was 1956. They drew on from a great tradition, so they were not the first to put that on the agenda. There had been women from all around the country waging different forms of struggle, whether it was anti-colonial or even just to feed their children. So that is on the one side. Today's session is called Seizing the Moment, Women Taking the Lead in Creating a New Normal. Out of all what has been happening since South Africa got its freedom, and since we discovered that those who had been traditionally oppressed actually got the legacy of both freedom, but also shackles in some ways. The levels of poverty have not improved, and many other things that those who struggled wanted to achieve. As that would be, an economic crisis arose, and in the throngs of that economic crisis happened as well this pandemic that we are now facing throughout the world. The pandemic shone a light on the cracks that were already in society. Poverty was deepened. Throughout the world, women bore the brunt of this poverty as they've always done. But worse still, another pandemic that already troubled the world reared its head again, and that was gender-based violence, and actually all forms in which patriarchy shows its dominance over women. And it is upon reflecting on what this pandemic and the deepening cracks in society have emerged, that there are two things. One way is to look at it as a devastation. Another way is to look at it as a time like winter, where all goes quiet and we regroup and recuperate, and as a way of imagining and creating what our springs will emerge. And in a way, this session today, it is to shine a light on that spring. Today, South African President mentioned the inheritors of the noble legacy of the women of 1956. And I see the three women that are going to lead us into the discussion today as those inheritors. They are the three who have achieved a lot in their lives, and there is no way I would ever make an introduction unless this day becomes a day of introduction. That would actually be befitting to all of them. So what I am going to invite us to do is to feel the energy that is in their being, that shines their humanity, and that light that lies their inner being. As we dedicate this day as a day of love, as a day of creating our feminisms as an act of love, let them shine. The first person who will kick us into a discussion is well known to most South Africans and well known internationally. That is Pregs Govender, my dear friend. And I think this quotation from a book she wrote, which is called Love and Courage, that was quoted by Mary Robinson as she gave the Mandela lecture one year, epitomizes who Praxis is. And the quotation says, "Life as it waves and wanes always provides opportunities for our humanity to emerge." Praxis has devoted her life to be courageous and to be defiant as part of that courage, and to instill love. She has written, she has rebelled. As you might remember, she was the only member in parliament 1 year to rebel. against what the party wanted to dictate and what patriarchy and everybody else wanted to dictate. I will not say much more about Pregs. She will kick this day, and I will introduce each speaker as she comes on. So over to you, Pregs, my dear.
Thank you very much, Bunie, and thank you to the BKs for inviting me to think together with all 4 of the speakers and moderator and poets and activists and all the people who join in this discussion today about what kind of future, what is the new normal that is being created by women and non-binary people across our world. And in the spirit of the day, I'd like to start with South Africa's constitution. And our constitution, one of our founding values of the constitution is the right to inherent dignity. The idea that every single one of us is born with dignity, with value, with worth, and that the systems, as we know, of oppression and injustice and inequality and violence destroy, undermine that dignity, that we always have opportunities to reconnect to that in ourselves and in each other, to remind us. And in trying to think of the future that is being created, despite the power of those who own the weapons of war in our world, despite their ownership of the media and the corporations which have destroyed the environment in many parts of our world, there is the power, the growing power of movements from Black Lives Matter in the United States to workers and farm workers and peasants movements to student and youth movements. And so I'd like to share a meditation I wrote earlier this year on life, death, and revolutions of love. We all want freedom and peace, peace of mind, peace of heart, peace in our relationships, peace in our homes and in our workplaces, in our movements, in our countries, in our world. The earth's abundant natural beauty sustains and nourishes each of us every single day, in the air we breathe, in food we eat, in the water we drink. Yet its abundance is extracted and exploited, divided and diminished by those who believe they own the earth and can divide and fragment her people. This is no time for those who look to every moment for dead profit, who have destroyed peace with endless political, economic, and military wars, who pollute our air, water, food, and bodies, who have created cultures of hate and fear and greed. This is no time for those who trade in death games and human destruction, hiding as collateral damage. This is no time for economies policed by army by guns and drones, tanks and warships. This is the time to see those who love, care, create, keep us alive from the womb to old age. To see beyond the limitations of gendered roles and responsibilities that systemic sexism has entrenched. It is time to shift what and whose work global budgets prioritize, including the over $1 trillion from the world's war economy. It is time to create life economies that care for the earth and humanity, that ensure safety for all, especially those excluded because of class, race, gender, geographic location, and so many other excuses. It is time to use sources of energy that do not destroy the planet and to ensure universal health care, decent employment with living wages and working conditions, a universal basic income grant, free quality public housing, education, food security, and sovereignty. This is no time to waste on media mirages. People across our world are expressing gratitude for and solidarity with the courage of those in the caring and cleaning professions. Yet their work is often not recognized or rewarded. They are standing up and demanding, and many across the world are standing in solidarity with them. To firm life, to nurture and sustain life takes courage. It is not the courage in the latest high-tech drone warfare. The people of our world, including the IMF and the World Bank, cannot slide in unjust structural economic changes by sleight of hand. It is time for wealth to be taxed and to shift our country's priorities to the health of the people away from obscene profits for a few. The people of the world are scrutinizing you, educating each other, organizing and mobilizing for water, housing, food, income, education, universal healthcare, for all our lives, for all our future. This time of illness and death is calling us to be insubordinate, to the unjust, patriarchal, racist, and capitalist system that created inequality and poverty and that drives gender-based violence, to free ourselves of all the injustices we have internalized that devalue ourselves, each other, the earth, and all her creatures. In this time of death and dying, we are evoking our courage to care for ourselves, to care for each other, knowing that someone we love will die. Yet tomorrow, the sun will rise and infuse our hearts with its beauty, reminding us that love is the quality of our being and that this is the time of revolution, when we remind ourselves and each other of who we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pregs. Those beautiful words that match so efficiently with our poet, talking really about every aspect of life, I would say. Just like her, she brought us to life. She gave us that energy that we all need to start rethinking what a new normal could be. Thank you for that. And for reminding us that the basic right is the right to dignity. Agency being very important and central to that through movements of people. The second sister we shall introduce is Linda Vilakazi. Linda is a coordinator of a program called African Women in Dialogue. It is a brain and other child. So she didn't birth it only in the brain. It's a brain child of Ausi Zanele Mbeki, who has a dream to make feminism that act of love that is instilled within Africa, throughout Africa, and within the hearts and minds of all people living on the continent, and therefore also people anywhere else on this universe. And this is the work through which I met Linda, because I was tasked with trying to imagine and craft how that love could come into being. In what ways could we bring people to go into their inner selves, dig and find love, and then bring that into agency as they practice their feminism. Very much in the past, we believed once upon a time that if there's violence, to fight and win against that, you have to be violent. And that we have seen has not worked. I want to duck and tail and say that was the male way of doing things. What could the sisterly way be? Linda has served in many different portfolios. She has done a lot of work. As an educator, today we are full of educators because Pregs is also an educator. As an educator, and also as one who crafts the visions of our leaders in the past, because she has also led in the past the OR Foundation, well, the Oliver Tambo Foundation. So without saying much, I will let your light shine, Linda.
Thank you, Bunie, and greetings to everyone this afternoon and morning to others. Bunie, I appreciate the lovely introductions you made and the work you've already done to help us contextualize the African Women in Dialogue platform, which largely also informs some of the nuggets that I would be sharing today. The theme, as was shared earlier, talks about seizing the moment. But I think if you read the excerpt, it calls on women to do so. I choose to take an angle that says, actually, the call seize the moment compels all of us, not only women, but all of us beings on this planet, in particular, in this case, beings in South Africa and in Africa, to seize this moment for the better good of everyone else. Of course, indeed, today we observe yet another South African Women's Month. And unfortunately, we do so this time under very difficult conditions and circumstances. As already alluded to, we are faced by the devastating pandemic called the COVID virus, which has to date in South Africa taken over more than 1,000 people's lives, devastated many families, caused strife and hunger in many, even those who never thought that their lives would look this bad today. Even those who never thought that they would ever go to bed without a meal. Today, we are all being affected by this devastating pandemic. It has disrupted our lives. People have lost jobs, and most also significantly has disrupted schooling. beyond even our worst imagination. And I cannot not mention schooling, because that is the first base of my career development. And I think education is the bedrock for anything in society. Today, also, in addition, we have grief that has engulfed many, many families. Almost every second household you get to has had a deep sense of grief through loss that they have suffered through somebody they know, somebody they live with. And yet, I think as South Africans, we do say today that we will seize the moment because we remain hopeful. We are a resilient nation. And I think some of the nuggets we would be sharing today are a little bit of those anchors that we believe we will continue to hold on to as we continue to be resilient and face this challenge that we have. Of course, this challenge being a pandemic. And I just looked around and I thought, let me look at the most simple definition of what is a pandemic. And I guess most of you have already gone that way to try and understand this phenomenon. And I like the fact that one definition simply said, a pandemic is a rapid spread of a disease or a virus in this case that occurs worldwide. And it occurs over a wide range of area. It crosses international boundaries and it affects a large number of people. And in my opinion, this is exactly what makes this pandemic different from many others that the world has seen, because this one knows no boundaries. This one forces us indeed to seize the moment because we are all affected. We are all affected in a way that even previously, those who had the means of production and the means of survival, those who had amassed the riches of this world, were able to cushion themselves against some of the epidemics we have had before, and even some of the pandemics. But in this case, even the rich cannot cushion themselves. This is an invisible virus that just cuts across any layer of segregation. It affects us all across class, across race, and across whatever layer that we could have used to protect ourselves against. And I think this is what makes it particularly key for us as a nation to stop and think differently, to stop and indeed seize the moment. If we talk about cutting across all levels, it makes me remember a headline that I saw recently in South Africa here in one of our financial mails, and I guess most of you would have seen it. One of the richest men, actually he's been billed as the richest man in South Africa, that's Christo Wies, the ShopRite owner. And the headlines read last week, how does one come back from losing 125 billion rands? And when I saw that, I said, yes, this is a different moment in our lives. This is a different moment that not only the underdogs and not only the poor have to think of ways to survive, but it is all of us. And for me, it throws in a spinner in the strategies that we need to look at, that this time around, we all have to learn to work together. We cannot afford to look across and say, this does not affect me, or this is not about me, because we have all been affected in many, many various ways. Actually, in some cases, the poor have had nothing to lose because they've long lost everything. And that's why the moment of recovery and coming back requires that we all self-introspect and we all find better ways of living, better and completely different from how we lived before. The notion of inequality has always confronted us as society. We've read previously a lot and debated the notions of the 1% versus the 99%, with the 1% being the rich that own the majority of the resources and the means of production. We've always decried the issues of abuse, issues of neglect, issues of violation of human rights by the elites against the underdogs, by men against women, and by the capitalist system against the workers. In all cases, also, we've always come out of this seeing that women are the most affected. That's why there's always a saying that women are the face of poverty. This actually even became more so pronounced now during the COVID time, where we have literally seen the devastation of how this pandemic has affected all and also women. So the inequality that we have spoken about and some of us preached about, and the wonderful, glorious statements that we have written in our vision statements, in our preambles of our constitutions, we now can see that little has been done to bring all of those to life. And this is the moment that, as we talk about, seize the moment that I believe that we need to bring to action all the theories, all the missions, all the aspirations that we have always spoken about. And that process endures all of us to do so. Last week, my attention was caught by an article written by a Dineo Rabaholo, who is from amandla.mobi. And she wrote a short, beautiful article in the City Press, and she had entitled it, "Value the Lives of Those You Don't Know." And this really spoke to me because it aptly captures some of the lessons that we need to take away from this COVID era. She states that valuing the lives of those we know only is a dangerous mindset. It flies in the face of what is needed for us to defeat this pandemic. And I think earlier, when Pregs quoted from the Constitution and spoke about the inherent dignity, for me, she also spoke quite beautifully to this. So what we all have to take up and change our attitudes as lessons from this COVID is that we cannot afford to only value the lives of those we know or those that we live with, but we need to learn to value every life, because this is an ecosystem that we all exist in. And an ecosystem in its own nature calls upon those that exist in it to be codependent and learn to work together. If I borrow from some of the principles that we use in the African Women in Platform Dialogue, it's a principle where we call for a new value-based ecosystem that needs to be adopted if this continent is to succeed. And if this continent is to succeed, that new value-based ecosystem has to be an approach that talks about inclusivity, that includes every individual in this continent in its own development. It should be an ecosystem that leaves nobody behind through any other isms that we have concocted over the past. It calls for our actions to be inclusive and promote equality across board. It believes that everybody has a reason to exist, and if we maximize their being and their light that shines, as Bunie used this at the beginning, then we will be on a better footing. I will be better because the next person is better. It would not be a slogan, but it would be something that we practice, and we have to learn to do that. It is through that practice that we bring forth the theme of also feminism, that we all need to embrace the values of feminism. In this case, feminism simply being about bringing about inclusion and non-discriminatory of others and equality for all, ensuring that we treat every being as a being with a purpose and allow people to realize their full worth without us putting the necessary obstacle around. Unfortunately, we all come from a past that is very devastating. And I think, unfortunately, over time, we have come to learn and adopt negative attributes, some of which we adopted from those that dominated us in the past. We need to, in the same process as we adopt and work towards a new value-based ecosystem, in the same way as we work towards embracing the values of feminism, that we need to learn to look at cleansing and healing ourselves. And Bunie spoke about that process also that we infuse quite strongly in our work. We strongly believe that we need as individuals to go through a process of total detox from the negative attributes we collected over time and learn to even be vulnerable in our own spaces, because it is in that process that we will fully explore our inner love and power that could help us all heal and find a way towards a better continent. Mematleke, in one of her many, many achievements, once spoke to a group of African men as she led the Bantu Women's League. And she said something that stuck with me. She said, the criterion of leadership is a genuine love for African people and a good and clean heart. And for me, these are some of the concepts that drive me, that help me revisit some of the practices that even I personally have, but also that helps me to share this and hope that this continent and this country will take this forward. As a result, at Afuid, in any of our activities, we go and practice the processes of healing, and healing in its broad sense, in whatever way that you can find it possible to reach into your inner strength and use that to advance your life as well as the lives of those around you. So I strongly believe that indeed we can seize the moment, but we have to seize the moment by observing certain values that in the past we talked about, but did very little to practice and to really work with. And this will make us all vulnerable. And as we become vulnerable, I strongly believe that we will all be able to build a better society. As the saying goes, we should never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think we have that opportunity. Thank you.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. That is an interesting concept, that a crisis can be good. Thank you, Linda, for adding on to the two previous speakers, the poet and Pregs, and actually also Belinda, in making us understand what I ran away from describing, which was the havoc that is wreaked upon society by this pandemic in all sectors of life, jobs, schooling, health, everything else, but also in being the dis-ease and the disease that has facilitated many passings and many families are now in mourning. I ran away from that one because actually it has affected me quite a lot. It is the point at which one sees clearly how death becomes part of life. I will leave it at that. And the underlining of the valuing of all lives. The beautiful description of feminism. I hope everybody who is participating here was listening, because sometimes it is thrown at us feminists as if it is a word that means hate. And I'm glad that you put it so nicely that everybody can understand. And to emphasize healing, to which we shall return when we go back to the discussion. Now I take this moment to introduce our last speaker, who, oh, I should have practiced I had meant to practice the correct pronunciation of this name. Of course, I excuse, old. Gayatri, Naraine. If I have murdered it, please excuse me, know that it comes from love. Our language is different. Sometimes You know, if you were Mosotho, I would have just said you are Sister Gayatri. So that's how we would call you. This is a sister who is both a student and a senior teacher. It is only through humility that anybody can actually understand that as they teach, they also learn. So to be a student and a teacher at the same time is a revelation. And this is within the context of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, where she is a spiritual educator. Behind her, she has 40 years practicing Raja Yoga meditation. And she takes these principles and values into the spiritual education that she does as a writer, a speaker as well. And she traverses all layers of society through that work, be it the UN community and space, and be it the grassroots and all in between. A famous quotation, I have no idea whether it is correct that it is Mark Twain, but whenever I search for where it originated, it always says Mark Twain, who said, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. For me, this underlines the question, who am I? Who are you really? Are you the clothes you are wearing, the shapes you do? Are you the skin lightening you do? Are you the roles you play in society? Are you the perceptions? Are you your relationships? Who are you? And I think, I'm making a guess, a wild guess, that I think by the time Sister Gayatri finishes her talk, we might have a bit of light how to answer this question for ourselves. As she shines her light, as she shines her light and her inner being and seizes this moment to show us what could be this new norm. Over to you, sister.
Thank you very much. I just love it when you say Sister Gayatri, because I will start off with a little story. Last December, I was in Israel for a conference, and the conference was on psychiatry, religion, and spirituality. And I was doing one of the inspirational pieces. So as I was there, I took the opportunity to visit Bethlehem. And as you all know, Bethlehem is in the Palestine. So I crossed literally a line, and I was in Bethlehem, and of course, over the wall. And being there, I went to the places of Jesus Christ, because I went to a Catholic school and I was intrigued by that. And as I was visiting the shops to look at the beautiful olive wood carvings, a gentleman came up to me with a photograph of his daughter. And he was telling me that the 13-year-old had cancer, and he literally just works, and he literally earns enough money to treat her, and he has to go all the way to Jordan to do that, where just across that line is a children's hospital, but he couldn't go there. And so as he was talking to me, I was reflecting on what he was saying, and I looked him in the eye and said, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "So that you can bless my daughter, so that she can heal." And then I looked at him and I said, "But why are you asking me to bless your daughter?" He says, "Because you're my sister." And those words, "because you're my sister," moved me. The next day, I was in, this time, Jerusalem, and I was on my way to the conference in a taxi. And the taxi driver, who was Israeli, was talking to me and telling me that he could take me to the Dead Sea, he could take me to see places. And then I said, "Well, why are you concerned that I see all these places?" And his reply was, "Because you're my sister." And so I found this feeling in me that there was a Palestinian calling me his sister, and here is an Israeli calling me his sister. So I love it. And now I hear you say Sister Gayatri. So I just love being called sister, because I think inside of me, it pushes the boundaries of my consciousness. It unlimits me in certain ways. The other aspect I wanted to start off with is this word feminism. People usually ask me, "Do you belong to a feminist organization?" And I would say, "Well, what do you mean by a feminist organization?" And then the next word they would ask, "Are you a feminist?" And then again, "What do you mean by asking me if I'm a feminist?" Later on, I came to understand, because I still think it's a very positive term. I think it was a breakthrough for women all over the world. But later on, I came to realize that the word feminism or feminist has come to mean, and I think, Linda, it was you who mentioned it, a term of hatred, a term of not liking the other. And so this is where the word Shakti came into my vocabulary, because I ask myself the question that if this word feminism is being defined by a patriarchal society, I'm sure, as a word to mean the opposite, then perhaps as a person who someone would see, anyone across the world would see as a sister, maybe I need to look at another word. And so that word is Shakti. Shakti is a feminine form of God's power. So when the term Shiv Shakti is used for a goddess, it is a spiritual power that comes from the highest source. So I decided today to talk to you about the Shakti way, because I think this is the call of the time, because we are getting an opportunity to do something differently, to be something that would create an impact in our world. So the Shakti way for me is to call it the time. And the only way that to answer this call is to go deep within ourselves and discover our core strengths. In Raj Yoga, Shakti is a power which is deeply respected, it is sought after, and it is brought to bear on situations. It fashions and transforms that which needs changing, particularly in critical times. Shakti is a source that, when connected to a higher power, it satisfies a deep quest within the individual. And that deep quest is Shakti unveils this question of who am I? But it requires, the Shakti is sourced from a higher power, but it requires consistent practice. Shakti manifests 3 essential capacities within the being. And these capacities are seeing with love, acting from the heart, and being in the right place at the right time. And that for me is the meaning of seizing the moment. The understanding that I'm always in the right place at the right time. So recognizing the power that we all possess, whether we're a man or a woman, but it is a feminine form. Recognizing this, how can we move through the pain, the grief, the crisis and chaos that we face today to live with ease and grace? The crisis we face is a crisis of consciousness. And to overcome this consciousness, we must unlimit ourselves. We must journey within to discover the wisdom and to find the answers that are found within our own very beings. A woman's greatest fear is violation. This is the primal fear that she can be violated at any time and anywhere, and she goes. And this is what makes her vulnerable. Yet, ultimately, it is this very vulnerability that is her greatest strength. As the vulnerability takes her to a place within herself that she has to make sense and meaning. And it is in this space of making sense and meaning that she discovers that greatest strength. And it is also an opening for her self-compassion, for her true strength, and for that great congruence or unity that soul consciousness gives. Because it is moving within herself to discover who she really is and not how she has been defined by others, ultimately makes her inviolable. So how can we push what I'm calling the boundaries of consciousness, and how can we source our Shakti? If we are not able to source Shakti in the face of a crisis, we will likely succumb to despair. So Shakti is the power that manifests, that creates, that conserves, that transforms. Shakti centers us in the eye of the storm. As the storm is going around, COVID-19 is swirling around us as an invisible enemy, as it's called in this part of the world. So how does this Shakti power centers me in the eye of that storm? It is also like a still point that I stay stable and firm as the world keeps turning around me. You know, here, I don't know in South Africa, but here, 2020, the year, is being termed as the year we couldn't breathe. We couldn't, what COVID affects is the lungs of the human being. And we stop breathing. It affects that respiratory system within us. But for a few months, COVID was like put on the back burner when we witnessed George Floyd being killed and was calling out, "I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe." And his attacker didn't hear. The person who was pinning him down didn't hear those words. So here we're thinking in this turning world, 2020 is drawing us to our breath. So Shakti centers us in the eye of the storm, and it's like a still point in this turning world. The more we anchor ourselves in our Shakti and operate from there, the more we will experience our core strengths like love and courage. So I wanted to put this inner power that we all have that is called Shakti within a trajectory that we call the spiritual trajectory. And the first aspect of that spiritual trajectory is awareness. So So what is this, the Shakti awareness we should have? And the Shakti awareness is for we as women to be whole, to become integrated. When I'm in touch with my wholeness, I realize that everything I need is within me at any given moment. I'm a being who is a catalyst with an identity that originates from the fertile ground of soul consciousness or of consciousness that is spiritual. So I must seize the moment to choose to evolve consciously at the time of crisis, to unlimit myself and to embark on a fresh adventure of discovery and growth. I should allow for old ways to die, much like a caterpillar has to die for a butterfly to emerge. I must develop new gifts and new capacities and discover things I never knew I had, untap my inner potential. Then there's the Shakti attitude, which is of flexibility and resilience. I believe in and now I am drawing brush strokes here. I believe that there are 3 falsehoods about women that she has been fed individually by the patriarchy. And this is the 3. They're very simple. Women are inferior to men. Women are dependent on men. And women are incomplete without men. This has formed a collective attitude and a collective consciousness around the world, which has resulted in a deep sense of insecurity for the woman ever since she's a child. I suppose ever since she's in early childhood development, perhaps even when she was conceived and her sex was discovered through scientific means. So this is why we need to source our Shakti, and we need to use our Shakti to undergo a profound transformation within our consciousness, because it's a crisis of our consciousness of who we are and how we have been defined and what is our authentic self. We need to discover our own true strengths and come to a place of healing, because healing leads to empowerment. We must come face to face with a self-respect that is innate within us. That's our inalienable spiritual right, our self-respect. That's our true worth. That the UN Charter, we heard about the South African Constitution, but the UN preamble in the Charter says its sole purpose of being is to reaffirm faith in the dignity and worth of the human person first, and then to stop succeeding generations from the scourge of war. So when we come face to face with that self-respect, we return ourselves to seeing our lives as life, as liberty, and as love. Because we tap into a flexibility, and this flexibility gives us the right to change our consciousness. And this flexibility gives us the resilience to move through our vulnerabilities, not to deny them, not to suppress them, but to move through them. And this is why Shakti is a way out. It's a way forward. It's a way up. So we are moving through our vulnerabilities, and we are at the same time emerging our strengths. And then there is the Shakti vision, which I think is very important. When all these things are going on, how are we seeing it? Because however we see what's going on outside, invariably, we will become the victim of it. And being the victim of it would somehow define us. And when we come into the discussions, maybe I can give examples of what I'm saying. But seeing with love is a transformative act, because we bring forth the world we want to live in, depending on how we see it. So Shakti vision is like divine insight. And divine insight enables us to stop. What are we stopping? We're stopping interposing prejudices. We're stopping demands. We're stopping fake news. We're stopping, what they call here as theories that are not true. And we will stop that, because these things in the world that I live in, here in the United States, is that they are put in such ways that they appear before my eyes and somehow impact me psychologically for me to believe that these are true. And so when I see what appears before me, a Shakti vision is that I understand that I will act according to what I see. And when I act according to what I see, I then become responsible for that action. And I cannot escape responsibility for the actions I've done, according to our spiritual laws. So seeing with love is to see the person as he or she is, outside of the limits of interposing prejudices, demands, or these false theories. A loving vision opens an otherwise invisible door. Now, I'm going to say this slowly because it is something very subtle that happens when I look with this Shakti vision. A loving vision opens an otherwise invisible door to a path of opportunity. And on the other side of that door, the inner side of that door, is a subtle kind of corridor leading in a direction that no one else can see but me. And it is from what I'm seeing that my core strengths are emerging. And then finally, it's the Shakti action, because actions are important. From awareness, I must bring it into action. I just can't leave the action part out, because then there is no transformation. So the Shakti action is acting from the heart. Acting from the heart is considered to be a poetic act because it creates communities of inclusivity. And I know that this came up as well. I think the new normal, one aspect of the new normal is radical inclusivity. And for that, we have to do poetic acts. We have to act from the heart. We are looking at where and how, now that we are faced with the crisis, we are returning to certain fundamental questions in our lives. We are looking at where and how best can I serve the world? What is my unique purpose? Has it been redefined? What am I here to give life to? What am I here to conserve? Shakti action is a blend of tremendous strength with a great capacity for compassion and care. When we see the whole, which is sometimes referred to as a systemic seeing, we are able to act with care for the circumstances that we are in at the moment. And according to what we see as a reality, we will be able to respond with adequacy of what to do in the there and the now. So experiencing this elevated power that I'm calling the Shakti is a warm, uplifting sense of being when I'm able to see through all the chaos and still touch the goodness and the kindness and the compassion first in me, and then to be able to see it and touch it in others. This brings within us, despite the silos that are being created, despite the unilateralism that we're seeing, and the UN is in, I think, a crisis of consciousness, because it is supposed to be a multilateral organization, but everyone is becoming very unilateral and is withdrawing from the UN in many instances. So this Shakti awareness allows for us, it brings about a feeling of closeness, of belonging, and of wanting to include. So finally, seizing the moment is the awareness of always being in the right place at the right time, no matter what that is. I may even be on the street. I may have an extra mask. I'm seeing someone not with a mask, and I offer that mask to them, because it's not about just my safety, it's about the safety of others too. So always being in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. Because what I choose to do in that moment becomes my Shakti footprint of whatever we are going to see as the emergent new normal. So Om Shanti, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And my final words to you are salutations to the women of South Africa.
Thank you for those powerful words, building somehow on the three speakers before you and the poet, and defining so eloquently for us what I call a teaching, actually, doing your teacher job. This concept, more than a concept, this way of being Shakti in its three elements: seeing with love, acting from the heart, and being in the right place at the right time. And bringing us to this concept of understanding vulnerability as strength. As we see the oppression of women, we are not stuck in the darkness that the oppression is trying to pull us through, but we also see that we can gather our strengths through that. And actually also zooming into this moving concept of seeing COVID as a disease, but also a disease of breath. And then that gets together so beautifully with seeing that what became a symbol of oppression, for some months it was just running, I can't breathe. So as those who carried out that act to stop someone's breath were acting from some place that I also see as vulnerability, not to know that you can use your power as love, but instead you use it for hating. And as that happens, it gives the world this momentum to unite and to bring the two together. So on that note, I would like to invite the participants who are on the chair, on the Zoom, to please, if you have questions, you have contributions or what, to indicate to me on the chat. We shall pick up whatever questions come up from the chat. We thought by this time we would be having 30 minutes, but we have only 15. So while we are collecting chats, I will start by asking the three sisters to help me think through this way. Linda put it beautifully that there is need for healing, for detoxing, and everybody else has brought up the issue of creating and the concept of love as sort of the fire that fuels this creativity. So if you were somebody sitting right now, listening to this discussion and thinking through, I have never really thought of it this way that is being brought through this light that's being shone today. What would be some practical steps that you would suggest for us embodying Shakti in a way, or for embodying, for going through this process of healing, for going through the process of detoxing and creating anew? Who wants to start? Can we have all these speakers on camera, please? Pregs? Okay, thank you. So, does anybody want to start, or should I volunteer you? I'm thinking, for instance, Linda could describe for us how through this movement of bringing women into dialogue, how that could be an opportunity. I am thinking of Praxis meditation on life, death, and revolution of love as something that could bring life. In fact, I don't even know why I'm saying what I'm thinking. 3 of you are teachers. So in what ways could you teach this? Or have you taught as you go along?
I'll go
just so people can go away with some tool, some thinking of, yes, it's doable.
Okay. Can I start, Bunie?
Sure.
Thank you. I think for me, when I bring up the aspect of healing, it comes with a strong background that we all carry a lot of baggage and experiences from the lives that we have led. And that often our actions are a reflection of our inner being. And that's why sometimes people will do things and then be surprised and say, was that me? I did not intend to do so. And therefore, if we are to talk about the new, if we are to talk about a new world order, if we are to talk about a new approach to how we build institutions, how we lead, and how we coexist, I think it's very important that we also deal with the pains that we carry. We come from background. In South Africa, our history was really damaging, and you cannot often expect a person who carries that to also always be of sound mind. So it's a personal gift that each person has to give to themselves, to dig deep and heal and deal with the pain that they've carried, so that their actions are that of love, as you've said, and that their actions are that of purity and that of embracing others. And that's where I stem from. And I think our inherent strength will shine better if we can learn to go past the pains, because then we will look at the next person without the tinted glasses that we have carried through our lives. So healing in this case is a process of detoxing your inner self and being able to engage within purity with the rest of the world and with good intentions. But I guess the other speakers will also give other examples of healing. And healing can come in many, many ways. Others go on long hiking trails, on long walks, others go back to their religious beliefs. Others do multiple traditional practices, including meditations and all else. It's about finding that which works for you, that which allows you to get into your space and deal with those things that inhibit you, those things that make you racist, that make you sexist, and that makes you amass everything for yourself, even beyond what you can use in a lifetime. Thank you.
I can follow Linda on this because for healing, what happened in the United States with George Floyd, there were a number of people, and I will start with the Brahma Kumaris organization to begin with, who approached me, and they were members of the organization, and said, you know, we need to heal because what has just happened, there are implicit memories lying within us that we thought we did process through the practice of meditation, but they have just surfaced and they're creating a great deal of grief in our lives. So what they did was they created on Zoom something that is called a healing room. So every Friday they come together, and what do? They come together, they would sometimes play a clip, but the most important thing that they do is together they engage in conversation. And the conversation is in a safe space so they can look at things that are within them that they can see, and things that are within them that they cannot see, but that emerge. And I feel that one is, you can take yourself as an individual and put yourself through a practice and say that I'm going on a detox program as an individual, and I'm going to detox myself in my quiet space, and I'll do it for 7 days, and I will go through that cleansing process and I will emerge healed. That's fine, that's beautiful. But I think a deeper level of healing from one's grief is to be in conversation with others and to feel included in groups that are safe and that would listen to you. So I found the power of the conversation in the group setting, it was fundamental to a lot of people healing because they were getting the help from the collective.
Thank you. Do you want to come in, Pregs, or should I continue? Oh, there she is.
Thanks, Bunie. I suppose that the connection between finding those things that connect us to our joy, to the inherent dignity that we're born with. Babies have it naturally. There are people who have different practices through which they connect to their joy. I mean, one of the founders of the Brahma Kumaris, Dadi Janki, had that through a lifelong practice of meditation. And Mandela, when he came out of Robben Island, had that lovely state of being that people experienced from his meditation practice for 27 years of 10 minutes every morning. And so that challenge of bringing that into the reality of families, communities, organizations, movements, etc., is the challenge, is how to be able to create the spaces for us to connect to our dignity. So for example, if I think about a large meeting, because I think one of the questions was how do you do that at large settings, is how do you create the space within which people take a moment. So for example, in the water and sanitation hearings, when I was at the Human Rights Commission, we'd have a moment where people would connect to their dignity, and I would use the Constitution as a way of getting people to experience the power of love within themselves. And that released a great deal of power to be able to stand up and participate. So women who generally were quiet would actually participate much more actively in those hearings. So I think that there are ways that can be collective, and I think there's numerous ways that are being done across the world in different movements, which are either working with all the aspects of ourselves, our bodies, our breaths, our minds, our hearts, the integrity of ourselves as human beings. So I think the danger for me about religions is that, and even a practice that I do, which is yoga, is that it gets in the current day world where you have someone like Modi and the BJP and the RSS, which are deeply conservative, racist institutions, which the RSS supported Hitler in World War II. It's how do we find the language that gets to the heart of things and that gets beyond the patriarchal notions and understanding of religion, of God, of whatever. So for those of us who are atheists, for example, who don't subscribe to religion or to God, how do we engage the goodness of our hearts, the love that is within every single human being? And I think that there's different ways that we do that. There's different things that give us joy. And each of those has to be, I think one of the things in Love and Courage that I ended with was, I would trust myself as I danced on air. And I think that thing of being able to trust that what we are doing in experiencing that joy can be in many different ways is important to affirm, so that we're not setting up hierarchies of belief systems or of practice and inferiority and superiority between different peoples of the world. So I think I'd like to contribute that. And I suppose that the thing of the UN Charter, there's a really interesting thing of, it talks about dignity, and it connects dignity in one of the articles to creating a international order that is capable of realizing all the rights in the Constitution, in the UN Declaration, so that in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, so that all those rights can be realized. And at the moment, we have an international order which allows a handful of people to be able to experience peace or joy, because there's also the connection between the material and the spiritual in ways that have to be recognized. That a child who is destroyed by an economic system through poverty or gender-based violence, we have to be able to understand how to change those circumstances. How do we change the economic system and the political system and the social system to enable the flourishing of the human spirit? Thank you.
Bunie.
Thank you. I am going to disappoint a bit those people who have asked questions. We have just realized that we are on the dot of the finishing time. I hope that some of the questions were answered as the discussion goes. Nevertheless, I hope that the presentations and a bit of what has happened now has given us some some food for thought, and something around which we can answer our own questions or even go into a few groupings to try and answer these questions. I just want to acknowledge the questions, even though we can't answer them now. One question was about why are we here? And how do we answer this for ourselves? So I think that was the question I raised at the beginning about who am I and why are we here? It was answered to some length in Sister Gayatri's presentation. And the next one is about definitions of feminism. Someone would have loved for all the speakers to have done that. How do we go about combating the scourge of GBV, that's gender-based violence, in our personal capacity? The fundamental barrier and that debilitated and disempowered women is poverty. Can we detox someone out of the vulnerability of poverty? We will not have time to answer those questions. And just for me to say what I thought brought together the conversation today was about how each individual can find it in themselves, how to then come out. There was a bit also about the collectivities that we can form, the activities in groups and so on. We did not really go into issues of being in struggle together, organizing together so much and so on. This was more a question about going into ourselves as inner beings. And therefore, we would then work with the system. Some of us are also fast becoming the poor, even if someone didn't belong there originally. So finding it in ourselves, how to heal, but also to say the concept of the poor can also be deceiving, because we can be tempted to think that just because I am poor, I am utterly powerless. Everybody, whatever their source of vulnerability, has some power in them. I will just end it there and ask Sister Gayatri to lead us into meditation. I have thanked all the speakers. I have thanked all those who participated. I have thanked the ones who were in charge with technology and everybody else I may not have.
And thank you, Bunie.
Thank you very much, Bunie. I think you did a wonderful job. And thank you for inviting me to do the final reflection piece, which I will do the way you started it, because we have already gone out of our time. We ran out of time. So I'm going to seize 5 moments. And so I invite you all to sit comfortably. I know you've heard a lot, and they were all very interesting things. But I'd like you to center yourself in the center of your forehead, and to visualize yourself sitting comfortably on the seat of the soul. And I'd like you to take some breaths, 5 breaths actually, and with each breath to connect to the Shakti within. Breathe in. Breathe out. Connect to the core strength of love within. Love is your Shakti. Breathe in, deep breath, and out. Take that love and connect it to the source. And with this love, source, the Shakti from the higher power, from the divine. And feel the love as it soars from God, building the capacity of the Shakti power in you. Take another deep breath. Breathe out. The power of this love as Shakti sourced from God connects you to your inner self-respect. A spiritual self-respect. A self-respect of discovering my authentic self. Breathe in and then out. Connect the self-respect to my worth. Feel your true worth. The worth of not just being a soul, but the worth of being a woman, of being Shakti. Breathe in. And then out. This time, look into the mirror of your true self. Of love, of self-respect. of worth. And see your dignity. Give yourself permission to see your dignity through the lens of being a Shakti. Of being the manifestation of this transformative power, the power that comes from the Supreme Source. Om Shanti.
Well, sisters, brothers, and everybody else who was here. Bye. See you in our next deliberation.
Thank you, Bunie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gayatri. Thank you.
So, final word.
Yes, can we talk?
Hello. Just a final word. I'd like to thank everyone. I have really received so many jewels this afternoon, and I think I speak for everyone. Manape, your beautiful poem, you reminded us that this is a time to learn and to heal. Pregs, the power of love. I can't think of you without thinking about this. And you reminded us of the integrity of ourselves as human beings. Linda, value the lives you don't know. This was imprinted on my heart. Thank you. And to Sister Gayatri, this definition of Shakti, warm, uplifting sense of being. I'll carry that with me. And Bunie, a special thank you to you. I felt you were the ribbon that threaded everything so beautifully together. And you ended by saying, everyone has some form of power within. Thank you so much for playing such a lovely role this afternoon, Bunie. And thanks to everyone for joining us in this rich sharing. Goodbye, take care, and keep safe.
Bye.
Just to let everyone know that the talk will be on our YouTube channel, Brahma Kumari's South Africa channel. So if you want to reference it again, feel free. Thank you.
It's through your wounds. It's in the darkest room that the candle glows. It's at the bottom of the deepest well that the softest earth will break your fall. It's on the mountain that I learned the most.
Thank you and stay well. Enjoy the rest of your evening.